Can you hear me? You got me back there? Okay. By the way, you guys, last but not least, Mr. Dominik, we're going to go right into it. It's all about football. 3 guys, 2 scouting, 1 a former GM, does all kind of, I still don't know what he does. I know he travels a lot. He moved to Nashville so he can fly easier and more often. But he's from Kansas. So my first of the 3 panel, Mark Dominik, and you know how I told you I met Adam Schefter? I had a guy named Matt Moore. And he wanted to know what Matt was going to do if he would stay at Miami. And Mark Dominik really, really wanted Matt Moore. Make a long story. And I feel badly to this day. He doesn't think I do what I do.
Well, I'm mad about it still.
Yeah, and I leveraged after that. And when he was looking for a job, I said, would you just come in for one class? And he's been here with us ever since. I'm so lucky to have him as a friend. So let's welcome these panel right now. SNWW, welcome. And Ric and Russ, no talking, one at a time. Respect your elders. Okay. Mark, I love the story. It's personal. And Adam tells his story every year. You got to tell your story. Here's a guy from high school. I love your story at KU and how you got all the way in your world of sports. And it's a good story. So be transparent that I enjoyed the story and I want them to hear it. Okay?
Sounds good. I'm not sure. Is this on?
Yes.
It is. It sounds
We're
like
live streaming. No, you need that for the PA.
Oh, I can do that both. Okay, so
Maybe I'll do TV someday.
it's a great So I appreciate it. It's always good to be back. It's cool that you guys all made it. It's nice to be mask-free and a bunch of people together again. So that's kind of always good. My story, some of you heard it was a David course, but I will tell it. I'm very fortunate. I started my football path in college at the University of Kansas, where we're known for football. And we, at least some of you have.
Hey, you beat Texas this year.
I get coach. So back then, this is back in the 90s, right? So back then, sports management wasn't even a thing. Like Ohio had a program, Ohio State had a program, you guys had a program in Kansas. Like, hey, we're going to try a program too. So thankfully, I had a really good friend who had just been down at the athletic department and said, hey, they're doing this new degree. I was a sophomore in college. And I was like, doing this new degree called sports management. That sounds great. I'm going to do that. I want to be in sports because I played a lot of sports, but I wasn't good enough at any of them, right? But I played them all. And so I get the syllabus. They don't know what classes. I mean, this is back when we were taking, I dissected the human body in my junior year in college. I'm like, why am I doing this? I feel bad. That guy donated bioscience. He's like, this kid's, that didn't work out right. So anyway, what I decided to do then is how I put myself through college. I had a sports card shop, used to buy and sell baseball cards, all that good stuff. But then I volunteered at the athletic department, and I actually just walked in to the marketing department at Kansas and said, "You looking for anybody that is willing to work for free?" And they're like, "You know how to hang up posters?" I'm like, "I do." And so I used to do that. I mean, I spent 3 years volunteering at the athletic department, not really realizing what that would do, but just more like I just wanted to be around all the different sports and meeting people, and it was just kind of something that was comfortable for me. And so I spent my 3 years there, and then to graduate, I went to do an internship. And so thankfully, the University of Kansas offered me an internship at their athletic department. I think, good, I'd have a chance, maybe one day I'll get an AD, which would be awesome, right? So that's great. Fortunately, the Royals called, and my athletic department head of our chair said, "You should talk to Mark." So I go to interview with the Kansas City Royals. And the reason I tell you this story is everything has ways of working out. I'm now down to the final interview between 2 people to get into an internship at the Kansas City Royals and their scouting department. I'm like, this is great, because I was more of a baseball player than actually a football player growing up. Because I coached it and umpired it and all that stuff. So I'm thinking, this is great. Well, thankfully, a man by the name of Terry Bradley, who went on to become the Jets general manager, had called it. He worked at the Chiefs. He was director of college at that time with the Chiefs again, back in the early 90s. He called also and said, "Hey, look, we're looking for our first scouting intern ever in Chiefs history." And he got me to call Dr. LaPointe, who was my head of our department. And Dr. LaPointe said, "You should call Mark." And here's his phone number, mom's phone number, because my mom still lived. I lived at my mom's house. I didn't live in the basement. I lived on my own, but I happened to be. So I tell you this story real fast. Is that I happened to be home. It's a Sunday night, and the phone rings, and it's Terry Bradway. He's like, "Hey, Mark, I heard you might have an interest. We were looking for an internship." I'm like, I loved pro football. Like Saturdays when I was a kid, it was like, that's when you were on your bike and running around the neighborhood, whatever. Sunday was like, go to church, watch football. And then Monday was back then, just stay at halftime at least. And so I love pro football. And I'm like, I can't believe the Chiefs are calling. This is great. So he said, when can you come in? I said, I just can't come on Wednesday. I have an opportunity with the Royals. And I'm in the final interview. He goes, oh, I didn't know that. Can you come in tomorrow at 8:30? I'm like, I can do that. So I drive to Kansas City and I spend 2 hours there and offered me the internship. And I got that internship just because I put the time in a long time ago and just worked for free. And truthfully, when you get the NFL, you kind of feel like you're working for free for a couple of years there too because the pay's so low. But it was great. And so I was very blessed in terms of my opportunity, and it's a lot harder for all of you now. It's way different, and I get that. But it doesn't change the same path, the same thing I try to give you all recommendations for when you're taking the course or when I talk to you one-on-one. It's finding a way to get involved in some capacity at a very low level at a very fair cost. And so then I go work for the Chiefs for a year and a half, and it's kind of crazy. It's like Nirvana. It's Joe Montana and Marcus Allen and Derek Thomas. You're like, I can't believe I'm here, right? And so I spent 2 years there, and then in '95, a job opens up at the Bucks, and they actually paid salary there. It was $25,000. It was my first 2 years in the NFL, I made $17,000 for 2 years. So it wasn't. That's pre-tax. So it was not a lot of money, and the Bucks were offering $25,000 in actual benefits. And I'm thinking, this is great. You know, they've been so bad for so long. They just drafted Trent Dilfer, which is a quarterback you guys find out from television. And then they also drafted a kid named Eric Redd. And I went down there and drafted Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp. And like, wow, if we turn this thing around, this would be great. So I go down there. We go 6-10. Our head coach gets fired. Kansas City's 13-3. That I want to see in the AFC. I'm like, I'm the dumbest 23 doing that. And everything changed, right? So then I work my way through the organization. Our coach Dungy still is as good a person as you can imagine. He is that person. He absolutely is a saint and a great man. I get to work my way through the organization. I become a pro scout and coordinator pro scouting, director pro scouting. We had John Gruden come in, so I worked with 2 different guys who are 100% different, both found ways to win championships. And then in 2009, I got a chance to become the general manager of the Bucks. So I spent my 19 years in Tampa Bay. My last 5 was the GM of the Bucks, and had a great time. I mean, it's a stressful job. This wasn't as great before that job, I promise. But at the same point, it was a great journey through it, and then now I stay around the game.
Let's talk about now, though. After you got let go.
Yeah, so Schefter's a good friend of mine all the way through. We were really close. He was one of my inner circle, like 5 that I would talk to. That's why Schefter's so good at his job, that he could get people in. And he's like, you should do television. And I was like, oh, that sounds very stressful, but yes, I'll look at it. So he flies me, he gives me this is a good story. He gives me up to ESPN. And so ESPN's like going to bring me in for a tryout. So I'm going to jump on television. Never done it before. Like you have to wear the earpiece, they're talking to you, your earpiece. I don't know any of this stuff. Like, and they're like, we're going to give you a subject on Monday. We're going to tell you Sunday night once you get to Bristol, and then we're going to put you on the air at 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 8 a.m., and 9 a.m. for our Sports Center show. But we can't tell you because it's a really big deal. But we'll tell you once you get here. So I get to Bristol on Sunday night, and I'm like, okay, this is my first time ever doing television, put makeup on you, all right? And you've got everything in your mic and everything. Like, okay, here's our topic. Michael Sam is coming out, he's gay, would you draft him or not? I'm like, that's my intro to television. What a very difficult conversation it is, like trying to do that on TV. And I figured it out. I mean, this whole, we got through it. I got through it. Did 5 years at ESPN. Still do television with Fox Sports. I do stuff with Stage Sports. I still do. I was at Sirius XM this morning. Just did my show on Friday that I do. And then I work with athletes now in the National Football League and help them earn as much money as they can while they're in this little window of a football career because it's so hard. And it's so hard to earn money in the National Football League. And so I partner with NFL players now. I'm not their agent. I'm not their financial advisor. I'm kind of like on the board of directors, and I help them through this.
I think it's a great story, and I do enjoy on the media side. Okay, everybody, Rick, you have a different story. Assuming you went to high school, let's go.
I do. I'm going to work a little bit backwards here and start off with where I'm at, how I got here. And I'm from Jersey. I can't sit down and talk. Right?
They're a little short.
Yeah. It's just a cultural thing. I'm Jersey. I'm Italian. We're going to talk. We're going to get live. We're going to get real. I don't want to just address the middle of the room, right? I work at NFL Draft Bible. We're on Sports Illustrated. Everybody says, "Dan, that's fantastic. You have that platform." Awesome. The 20 years getting there wasn't awesome, right? It's a journey, guys. And so, thanks for having me back, by the way. All right. So, I do the NFL Draft Bible on Sports Illustrated. I also do scouting. I'm an advanced scout for the NFLPA Collegiate Ball. Every year, we travel the country, we try to find the 112 best players in college, trying to go pro, and we compete with the Senior Bowl, we compete with the East-West Shrine Game. It's very difficult because you're talking about games that have been around for 100 years. We just had our 10th year anniversary. So you're competing. Everything in this business is a competition, right? It's very hard to work in sports. It requires a lot of hours, all right? I'm here to tell you, I did the Hub Football Camp. We recognized in COVID, right, the NFL teams couldn't bring players into their facility and work out. So we got with Don Yee, who's a great agent for Tom Brady, and said, hey, let's create a platform where guys can come work out during the COVID. We did 9 camps last year. 23% signed an NFL or CFL contract off the street. We would get 500, 600, even 700 players registered for one event. We whittled it down to 50, 60 players. That's a tough job. How the hell do you sleep? You don't, right? So I like to build businesses. I got into this business a whole different route. I kicked down every door I could. I failed so much more than I succeeded, right? And you heard that a lot here today. It resonates with me. Schefter, right? The rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter. Bro, you gotta get up, put your big boy pants on, and get back to work. And so, like, for me, if you ever listen to any of my shows, you know it's a can't stop, won't stop situation, right? People think it's a catchphrase, but it's actually a lifestyle for me. Because that's what my job is. It's a lifestyle. I'm never not working. It's literally 15, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. He talked about not going on vacations. I remember when my dad died. I just got done making his funeral arrangements. Sports Illustrated called, hey, we want to do that deal. It took 6 months to get to that point. No way was I not taking that call, right? So there we go. Boom. The next week, we're on Sports Illustrated. No time to sleep, no time to relax, no time to go on break. I did take a day off to get married, right? And I took the day after to recuperate. But I can't remember many vacations in the last 20 years. So everything I did has been self-made, kicking down doors, and there's no secret sauce, guys. It's hard work. It's a positive attitude. Worry about the things you can control, right? And that is being able to work with others, being able to take constructive criticism. I mean, guys, you've got to have elephant skin in this game, right? And I'll tell you another thing. Some of you guys are up, I say this every year, I've been doing this 5 or 6 years. Some of you guys are out here giving me the dead fish handshake. Stop it, guys, all right? Firm handshake, look somebody in the eye, okay? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm looking for leaders. I'm looking for people I can send out on location and represent my business, my company, right? Because I've mastered how to be 2 places at once, but I can't be 3 or 4 places at once. So you think I'm going to send you out and represent my company, go and give people a dead fish handshake? You can't even look them in the eye? Like, come on, guys. I know they're not teaching this in college, but you come spend a week with me at the Jersey Shore, I'll teach you about life skills, okay? And that's some of the stuff you guys need to work on, is work on yourself. I heard Bill use the Zig Ziglar phrase, if you give everybody enough of every, just give people what they're looking for, and you can have anything in the world. Trust me when I tell you, if you help people out, there is karma in this business. There are people that want to pass it forward. There are people that want to work with you. Write this down real quick. I forgot to tell you. RSC at NFLDraftBible.com. You just made a new contact. Okay? And so, I don't know how much time I have. I went to Johnson & Wales University. I heard of Jay Wu out here. Yeah, Jay Wu. And so, hey, I went for sports management. It was the first year they offered it, right? They called it sports entertainment and event management. By the time I graduated, they got fancy with it. And I had no idea what I was going to do. No clue. I don't even know. I was such a bad student, right? I was terrible. I didn't go to class. I was on academic probation for 4 years. I got thrown out of school twice in college and still graduated in 4 years. I did summer school going all the way back to middle school. I did summer school for 3 years in middle school, 4 years in high school, and 4 years in college. I was a fuck up, right? And so, excuse my language, it's a PG program. I figured we'd just keep you on your toes, liven you up here a little bit. But guys, what I'm telling you is it's never too late to change your mentality. It's never too late to learn. You guys are taking a great step right here because you can't teach experience. You can't teach what these guys have been through. But you can learn about it, you can hear about it, and I know you're all trying to be about it, so I'm just going to leave it there, and I'll try to stay seated for the rest of the program.
Thank you, Jersey Mike, that's all. Let's go to Russ. You'll have to follow him in that way, Russ. But hold on a second. Then get ready for your questions, because we're going to close out the hour with your questions. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, mine's sort of a mix of both. I mean, I went to business school, never thought I'd get fortunate enough to work in sports. When I got out of school, moved to LA, and sort of fluked into my first opportunity. Even though I was sending out a draft guide that I started doing while I was in college, I sent an NFL draft guide to every team in the NFL, the CFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, and the NBA, hoping and praying for a job. I still have the folder of over 200 rejection letters, which now, ironically, some of them are from people I've worked with, so it's so weird. But so I moved to LA, and I had a huge bash one night, and we were up all night. We had about 80, 90 people in a one-bedroom apartment. The next day, the gal I was with at the time felt terrible, so she baked cookies and cakes for the people who lived under us. I went and delivered them. Turns out it was, to this day, the guy who holds every record in the history of swimming and diving at UCLA, and a backup corner on the UCLA football team. Within 2 weeks, the three of us were hanging nonstop. And a month later, Al comes and knocks on my door and says, hey, I know you're working as a custom tailor, it's your job, but you want to work in football. I just spoke to our recruiting director because they need a gopher. You have an interview tomorrow. So I went up, interviewed, and the guy that Mark will know, Bill Reese, hired me to be his 2-day-a-week, part-time, unpaid gopher. And my entire job consisted of, for us old people, opening envelopes, taking out videotapes, putting them in machines, and writing down who was on it, what high school players were on the tape, putting a sticker on it, throwing it on the board, and then when that was done, I'd sit in the hallway on the days that Coach Wooden was supposed to come through in the hope that he was going to walk through so I could meet him. And that was all I did at UCLA. Did that for a whole year. The next year, I sent out my draft guide, again, hoping to get a job, and the LA Rams offered me the chance to come interview for a college scouting job. I interviewed to be a highlight tape maker at night. I'd come in and whatever, and I didn't get the job. I went to a guy named Kevin McKay. But 2 months later, a guy dropped dead in the pro scouting department, and the organization hired his son to replace him so they could keep supporting the family, but the son was a screw-up. So they said, you need to get somebody who's got to be free. And when they started asking around the college, people said, well, the guy who came in second for our job, I'm not going to tell you if he's good or bad, but he said he worked free. So they called me. I went and interviewed with Jack Faulkner, who at that point was old as dirt. He was
Careful.
Oh, yeah, Jack is unfortunately passed away. He was a great man.
Careful.
And he hired me. I worked there for 4 years under some crazy people, some good people, and amazing people like Coach O'Neill. I got fired right after the '98 draft for being a smartass. I do not kid you, but it's true. Moved back to New York. Went to work in TV, worked behind the scenes on the NFL Today Show with Jay Glazer. Did that for 2 years. During my second year doing that, I worked as an East Coast scout for the XFL, the original one. And then the next year, the Browns had an opening for a young scout, and this is where connections come in. A guy I was working with named Gary Horton said, hey, they're looking for a young scout. Can you give me a resume? I got my resume. He got it to Jeremy Green. Didn't hear a word. And I was like, son of a gun. I thought I had him. So I said, screw it. I went on the website, looked at everybody that worked with the Browns, and I looked at every bio. And I said, I think the guy that is one of the senior people at the Browns, Joe Collins, I think he worked with one of my mentors at the Rams, Dick Seltzer. So I called Coach Seltzer, and I said, Coach, do you know Joe Collins? He said, I do. I said, did you work with him? He said, well, no, I worked with his dad at Xavier, but Dick was always running around being a pain in the ass. So whatever it was, he called Joe, and he said, let me call Joe right now. And within 5 minutes, Joe called me and said, we want to fly you in for an interview. And I ended up getting the job as an area scout for the Browns. 3 years later, I made the decision that while professionally was a disaster, personally I'm thankful every day. I resigned from my job at the Browns to help my family and their business, and thankful that I did because 3 years later my dad died, so I wouldn't have had those 3 years with him. Then I got into media and never thought I was going to work for a team again. In 2012-13, both Mark Trestman and Jim Pop, who worked with Montreal Alouettes, were interviewing in the NFL. And I was speaking with both of them, sort of giving them the lay of the land of what's going on in the league. And when Mark got his job and then Jim didn't, out of the blue, Jim asked me to come work for the Alouettes. I thought my time with the team was over. Went to work for the Alouettes, absolutely loved it, was there for 6 years. And at the end of 2018, I got fired. And to this day, I feel sort of good because 6 months later, the person who fired me, the GM, was fired for fraud and stealing money from the organization. So I think it was actually good that I was gone by that point. I then went to work for the Calgary Stampeders, and a little over a year ago, the Montreal Alouettes called and offered me the chance to come back and run and head up all their U.S. scouting. So that's sort of my career in a nutshell.
So stand up for questions. I got one big question. I'm going to start with Mark. If anybody has questions here. Mark, GM and scout. The late Bill Giles, an NFL Combine scout, out of 4 days. My friend, you stopped by when I was at Missouri when I was assistant AD. But one of his frustrations, a scout would go out all season and get the reports. They go down to Tulsa and gather the information. Go back to the team, and the GM or the coach will go out and see the player, and they just kind of ignore everything that was done. How do you balance the scouting report and the coach's thoughts? And I say it sincerely, I'll get it from all of you, because I don't mean one's right, one's wrong, but you're the general manager. You've got all this information, scouts, you got coaches that want this guy, the scout may want this guy. How do you put all that together in a world where GMs are changed every year?
Yeah, no, I figured this out probably year 4 or year 5 when I was a GM. What I did in Tampa is I did a draft meeting as you normally would with your scouts, and then I did a draft meeting just with the coaches. And it had no scouts in there because I wanted the coaches to come real about how they like the players, and I didn't want it to be a draft room where like the scouts are there kicking the other scouts saying, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Instead, I would know both boards, right? I know what the coaches board looked like, I know what the scouts board looked like. And then what I did before we brought everything together, I'd go to the coach and say, hey, coach, maybe you want to look at that linebacker one more time. And I'd go to the scout and say, you need to go look at that tight end one more time because the coaches love that tight end and the scouts hate this linebacker or whatever it is. That way I can stop some of the unproductive conversations that happen in draft rooms that make them last forever and ever. So to me, that was a good way to let everybody have their voice heard. And I could also show the coach that, look, we're taking another look at your player. Show the scout, like, let's take one more look at this guy to make sure we're not missing something. And so when it came down to starting to rank the board and putting the board together, everybody had a better understanding. It felt like their voice was heard, and that was important to me.
Thank you very much. Let's open up the question. Start over here on the left.
Russ, you mentioned that you were a scout with the original XFL. And I'm not asking this in terms of business. I'm specifically asking about player development. And I'm asking all 3 of you, do you guys feel that, some players that can't make it in the NFL right away, but they could go somewhere and develop? Is there a necessity for that? Why, yes or no?
I would say for the players, 100% there's a necessity for it because it'll help players that probably can get better, like Kurt Warner or Brad Johnson, improve like they did going to NFL Europe. For the league of itself, I don't know if there's a necessity because the profits keep getting bigger. I don't think all the owners are that concerned about the product on the field as long as the revenue streams continue to grow. I think from the personnel and coaching side, they'd love to see it, but I don't know if it is like huge that the NFL must do something like that when there are other leagues that are there for these guys. We lose about 20 players a year from the CFL come to the NFL. So I think it'd be great if there was. Don't think it's going to happen, at least not with the NFL's money.
Next question right here.
We live in a day where scouting philosophies are different across different NFL teams. And budgets naturally, I'm sure, dictate a little bit. How do NFL teams kind of look at scouting as far as players below D1 generally? I mean, from past to now.
Marcus, go ahead. Whoever wants to start.
Well, I will say it's a real problem for me. You saw 6 FCS guys drafted last year, and I think that's nonsense. And the reason why that occurred, though, is, to be honest with you, to be a scout is harder than to be an NFL player. There's much fewer jobs in the NFL to be a scout. You know, people think being a player is hard. But so a lot of these scouts, for example, if there's a COVID year and there's no verified measurements or testing, most of these guys are not going to pound the table for a small school guy and put their reputation on the line. I think there's a lot of scouts that just want to keep that job. Now there's other scouts that are ambitious and want to work up the ladder and be a GM. There's different approaches, but I'll tell you this, if you're at FCS, they're going to go work backwards. Why is he there? Let me find out why he was there. Why is he not in the D1 program? And if you don't have the production, you got to dominate the competition, you've got to have the measurements, you've got to have the times that matter. And I'll tell you what, man, I get into some heated debates in the NFL PA Bowl war rooms. I had to get an FCS kid in this year. I said, guys, I bet my life on it. This guy's a making, right? And now I got your attention. Hey, if I got to go to that limit, I believe in myself. I'll pound the table for a guy, but I think, you know, a lot of it is a small school bias and a label. And I think with the HBCU Bowl and what they did, not having any HBCU guys drafted the last 2 years, it's a joke.
Yeah.
So,
Mark, your comment, remember, I went to Fort Hays and I'm still bitter about my 3-year set for the one game in 1966. Nobody came out. It was a long ways out. Go ahead.
I feel the same way. I mean, I look at it as, just like Rick did, I kind of look at it just the same thing. Like, I agree that there's a problem. Like, I remember my first year at Kansas City, I got to do like Western Missouri. It was like my one school I got to do. And there was a defensive end there. And the normal scout had gone in and gave him what's called a 58, right, which was a good backup in Chief lingo. I went to the school and did the visit and met the coaches, and I'm 22, 23 years old, whatever. I watched the tape, and I think he's a reject. I'm like, I think he's like a 4.9, and I'm scared to death, right? Because I'm like, this guy's been scouted for like 12 years. He thinks he's an NFL backup, and I'm like, I don't think this guy's got it. And I can remember another player where it was the opposite, like where I really was high on him, a small school guy, and you know the scout didn't like him. In the end, it does. You just got to have the guts to go and do it. But I do think 100% COVID killed it last year. It crushed an entire class of kids that will probably never get a chance to make it because they didn't get the pro days, they didn't get the workouts, they didn't get all, and it's terrible. And
Russ, put content on that's good stuff.
No, I think that the scouts' unwillingness to put a grade big enough on a small player and get him additional looks is huge. Joe Collins is one of my mentors, and one of the big things that Joe taught me when I was at the Browns was, if you have a small school player you like, I want a 4th round or higher grade, even if you think he's only a free agent, because those guys need more looks.
Over here.
I didn't want them overlooked.
Hey guys, I'm Ethan Catherine. I go to the University of South Florida. I just took a course with Mr. Dominik and Mr. Lande. And by the way, anyone wanting to take that course, it was awesome. You should definitely take it. I learned so much from these guys. And anyways, my question was, I just landed an internship with the student staff at USF in the recruiting office. So my question was, what are some things I need to do to prove myself as an indispensable asset? And what do I need to do to essentially work myself up the top?
Mark, I'm going to talk to you because it's the ecosystem. I think everybody wants to get in the NFL needs to work in the college.
If you can, yeah. I mean, to me, it's 2 things. Number one, I think if you ask too many questions, that's a problem.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. I need people that are going to do something. I'd rather you go do something and say, hey, what do you think of my work? And I thought I'd go do this too. Is that okay? Instead of like, hey, what should I do now? Like, what's the next thing to do? So trying to be busy and being busy are 2 different things. And so I think that if you can go find little things that you realize that can help the department and it's going to take extra time from you, that's great. But be a go-getter. Just be that person that doesn't have to be motivated to go do something and think that way. And the other thing is when you're in there, you got to remember, just like these players here right now, all eyes are on these players 24/7. Like these guys were up today at around 4:35 o'clock because today was P-test day, so fun for them, right? But they've been going, and they're going to go all the way till like 11 o'clock tonight. And I've got group leaders that follow these players all the way around. And they report back to me at the end of the day, and they give each player a letter grade of how their day was. That's how we did it. Same thing when you're at your school, and you got to think every day is a letter day, and I'm going to get an A or B today. And so I dressed for the job I wanted. I mean, I wore slacks every day, all the way through my NFL career. I just did because I always wanted to become a GM, and I thought that's what I should do.
Russ, quick comment and keep going.
The only other thing I would add is just remember, no job is too low for you to do.
Right.
If you're in this business, you have to do the grunt work if you want to survive.
And I take the trash down in sports manual worldwide.
Go find out what you can do for your supervisor. Take some responsibilities off his plate. To Schefter's point earlier, make yourself indisposable. Hey, how can I help you out? How can I help you out? How can I help you out? Next thing you know, you've got so much responsibilities on your plate, they ain't gonna let you go.
Let's go down here.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out today, helping me out, helping everybody else out for your time today. Just a quick question regarding, when you start scouting these players, how many scouting reports did it take you guys to do to kind of get comfortable to the nature of it? And then the second part to it is, what position did you find that took the most to get comfortable with?
I would say quarterbacks, based on all the professionals in the 32 teams, are swinging and missing on quarterbacks quite often. I think is the hardest position to evaluate. There's so many different schemes, so many different levels of competition. For me, when did I feel comfortable? I mean, honestly, I think once I got around other scouts and realized my knowledge was just as good, if not better. And it takes years, and you're always learning as a scout. You never stop getting better. You hang around these guys, or you're in the war rooms, and you're just trying to learn from osmosis. So I think it's a continuous. I don't know how many scouting reports, but you'll get a feel. The more you go out there and do the eye test, because the film is one thing, but really at the end of the day, once you get out in the field and start scouting players in person, I believe that's when you really start to find traits and physical things that can separate players.
Mark, you want to
I think the only thing that's fortunate, I didn't really add the best caveat of my story. I forgot that when I took the Chiefs job, Royals, I called Russ and hey, thanks, I appreciate taking the Chiefs job. That was their baseball on the strike, so I lost my internship. It was really amazing how it actually all fell right into place. My cool thing for me was, and I would encourage you all to do, and I'm sure a lot of you do this with, my first 6 months there, because I came in right as the season was ending in '93, so getting into the '94 draft. Back then, most of the scouts were still handwriting. We had a lot of older scouts, they still handwrote the reports. So every night I took home a stack of reports and had to highlight them, yellow and blue. And then I would take those notes, and then I had to put the yellow and blue notes into a computer system so we could create our scouting reports, right? But what helped me there is that's how I learned scout speak. And I just read it and highlighted and typed it, read and highlighted, read. And so there's so many great publications out there now where you learn scout speak. That's going to help you identify and really kind of be descriptive. I tell this in class sometimes, I don't always tell it, but my brother likes football, right? He's older than I, but he likes football. And he's like, the scout thing, what you done at school. And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, what is it? And I'm like, well, let's watch. So we're watching a game. He goes, oh man, did you see that catch? And I said, yeah, that's the difference. See, I'm looking at that guy, going, look at the high point, the way High point the ball, with his body control, kept the ball in bounds, caught it with 2 hands, secured it, put it in, broke a tackle, and went up the field 5 more yards, and got the most out of play, but got out of time. And that's what I saw. I saw a guy do all that, and you said, that's a great catch. Yeah. 2 different things, but if you can describe it, but you got to read it first.
Okay, no more stand up. I'll take what's here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jada. I'm actually a sports entertainment event management major at Johnson & Wales University.
Oh my God.
And my question is pretty general. It's a pretty general question.
Well, you have to give it to Rick because he's the only one that can relate.
Was there ever a time, like during college, and you said you did pretty bad in school, so was there ever a time where you thought it wasn't worth it and you just either want to change your major or drop out completely? And if so, why did you decide to not do that?
Well, he was never in school. Maybe you got to let somebody else answer that.
Because I come from a family, my father was a roofer, and he kind of installed a work ethic in me that you never give up, you never quit. My ancestors came here with nothing but the shirt on their back, and it's just not in my DNA or mentality. So I think through perseverance, you kind of find yourself, because that's really where you kind of find out what you're made of. And it's so easy to quit. It's the easy out, but it's just not in my DNA. So yeah, I thought about it, but I didn't really have another alternative. So I just put my head down. And the other part of that story is my final semester in college, I made the dean's list. Okay, so
Johnson Wales lost accreditation.
I will tell you this. The professor said, "Yo, Rick, don't come to me for a reference. I'm not putting my reputation on the line for you. I went and got an internship on my own at the Yes Network, interned there for 7 months, driving from Jersey to Stamford, Connecticut. Sometimes the traffic would be 5 hours each way. And I did that for 7 months for free. And I worked the NFL now on the weekends. I did Mike in the Middle during the week, so I did that for 7 days a week for 7 months, and I got my first job for $30,000 a year. Hey.
Thank you.
I would say one little thing too. There was times where I had that problem. Like the hardest part about scouting and reviewing is, again, my first year, like I said, my first 2 years was 17,000. My next year was 25,000. My next year was 30,000. Then it was 33,000. And I got friends, my buddies are out there making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, when's this going to happen? Because it is such a, so just know that when you go in, if you get that opportunity, wherever it may be, just be prepared mentally, like how long that journey is going to be financially too. Because that's what kind of weighed me down, was like, is this ever going to really happen? And sometimes that's just when something really pops. But I'm kind of the same way. I wasn't going to give up, but I was depressed a lot of times. Like, what am I doing here? Because it took so long to kind of claw your way through it.
Okay,
Positive mentality is a skill set.
okay, let's go. Good stuff.
Alex
You gotta keep your
Fitzgerald,
number, bring
Fielder,
Fielder.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question for you guys. I know we talked about, before you guys were in here, about culture fit and character. And obviously that's important when you're making a huge investment in the draft with a lot of these guys. So I'm curious, I've heard the stories of, hey, we talked to the janitor about, how he was treated by, this person. Any stories about how deep you guys dug to get information on guys and how important that was when evaluating a lot of these prospects?
You got one, I got a quick one.
Well, I mean, I can just tell you right now, there's a kid that we're ready for the CFL draft. Canadian kid. He's at a school in the U.S. and he's a double transfer. Most of the scouts that I've worked with in the CFL, they'll call one coach of the school. For this kid, I've already spoken to 9 people from each of the schools, a total of like 18 people so far. I've called everybody. If you don't talk to every school they play at in college, at least talk to 2 or 3 people. Because if you only get 1 or 2, you may get the same message that sort of the school is trying to put out there on a kid. The more people you talk to, you can sort of find exactly what makes that kid tick and what he's about. Because in our league, it's not a ton of money, but it's still money, and you got to know what you're bringing in your building.
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Malik Lay from Columbus, Ohio. Our question is, how hard is it to find that diamond in the rough, despite some of their past with previous teams as a practice player? How do you evaluate them? Have a lot of film.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta do the work. You gotta go into the schools, you gotta talk to the coaches. To the previous question, I go hand in the tailgate with the parents and see who the entourage is. Who's this player bringing to the games? Who's he hanging out with? You can learn a lot about a tailgate is hanging with the parents. Finding diamonds in the rough, again, you gotta go with your gut, you gotta train your eye, you gotta learn how to do that. I know, like for us, if we go into a school and they're not on the Blessed or national, we got something, right? And a lot of it is relationships. I mean, I've been going to Rutgers and Temple and Boston College, Patty, I see out there for 2 decades, right? So I know who to trust. I know who's feeding me BS. And a lot of times when you have that network and the relationships, guys get on your radar, but it's really about the due diligence and doing your homework.
Where am I here? Right here? No, right here.
Okay. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. I'm a first-year agent. So let me ask you, if you're in my shoes, right, and you're looking to build relationships with scouts, with coaches, if you're in my situation, in this atmosphere, this environment, what would be your best strategy to execute that? And then in addition to that, what bars do they hang out after the draft?
I have no idea what you're talking about. So best, I think the number one thing you could do, is I would be at pro days. Like whenever there's a pro day anywhere near you, I'd go to the pro days because you're going to get the agents that are going to go to the clubs. So pro days to me is a great place to just network as hard as you can. Like this place is good, but pro days are really a great networking spot. Maybe not so much with scouts, but it is with agents if you want to start to get to know that agent community. The agent community starts to get to know you, right? And then there are also the more times you're at the pro day, the more times you're going to the next year. The next year you go to Rutgers for 10 years from now. You go to the same school for 10 years. That kid that's a junior has been seeing you at the pro day for 2 or 3 years now. Now he's a senior. He's like, I've met you a couple of times. Take interest in the young guys in the program. So when there's a pro day there, there's other kids sitting around that are part of the football program. That's who I can go to talk to.
Russ, go ahead.
And I would add the one thing, if you want, for an agent to make himself valuable, present to me something other than saying this guy's a good player now. Present a report to me with his background, his bio, where he's from, his family, because it doesn't mean I'm going to agree with your assessment, but at least I know what I'm looking at. If you give me something put together professional on your clientele, at least I'm going to remember, hey, this guy's organized. Whether it's players to play or not so much, but at least I know when I call this guy, he's going to know what this guy's up to, where he is, he's going to track down his kids when I need him. So be organized, give me something.
Hey, Mark, I want to share some. I had Alex Van Dyke, a very good receiver out of Nevada Arena. I went to Pro Day, and Dick Cayley, who's passed away, he was having coffee, and I sat with him. And he said, well, tell me about it. Because there's a lot of receivers. That's when Keyshawn went out. And I'll never forget sitting with Jim Steiner. And all I said about Alex, he's married, he's got one kid, one on the way. And when I went to visit his house, his wife made me hors d'oeuvres. And I said, I've never been served hors d'oeuvres as an agent. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And I talked about how unique he was. You know, married, kid, has another number, just totally responsible. When we came to the second round, this after Keyshawn went to the Jets, they had a first pick, Bill Parcells. They took Alex Van Dyke. To this day, I think what I said to Dick Cayley, because there's 6 or 7, Derek Mays, and a lot of receivers, but I really think that what I said might have made a difference because they're all very close. And I could be wrong, but I don't think that hurts his character. 2 last questions.
Hi, I'm Dennis from Charlotte, North Carolina. First, I want to thank you guys, especially you, Mark, because I took your course over a year ago. And good note just for today, for guys that were in here, I may be hearing from the Panthers soon because Mr. Federer did ask, he didn't know I was in his backyard volunteering at HBCU, asked where I live, contact. So the things and learning you guys are teaching is working for you today. So I want to thank you for the inspiration. But even taking the course going forward to get the position job, how do I kind of manage like scouting with it? Because I found myself before I started this job, scouting games, but once I got into coaching, it was like a drift. But I think it's a two-way sword. If you can stay sharp as a scout while you're a coach, you're that much better.
And how do you do both?
Yeah, like sharpening the scout, because you know my end result is to be an NFL head coach, but then using scouting tools at the same time, as opposed to just a coach teaching the guy which is important fundamental technique, but then using what you learn in the scouting, kind of sharpens both ends. So,
the only thing I would sit there and say is, as you're coaching, you should probably, you're doing advanced scouting on the opponent, so you're not still scouting. So it's kind of like, well, it's get more involved if you can, get yourself more involved in the advanced scouting of the next upcoming opponent, instead of just maybe sending somebody else out there. That way you feel like you're still sharpening that side while you're still, becoming a good football coach.
And you know, Mark, we tell everybody, every class, the informational interviews, they're the best thing we've ever put in a program, the secret sauce, meeting people and asking about it. You're connecting, you're coming to this, I'm proud of it. Last question.
Brian Galligan from Orangeburg, New York. Mr. Serritella was talking about earlier how you want somebody to look you in the eye. You want somebody to have a firm handshake and confidence, leader. Knowing that somebody has really good potential in the first round, second round, with those kind of qualities, if they don't have that, how far down the board do they go?
It's a case-by-case situation because every player is different. But if he's a really elite talent and he's got a dead fish handshake, I'm probably not going to knock him down the pedestal as much as a mid-round pick, right? But it's still going to bother me, right? And it's just something, you look for a leader of men. You look for, like, you always hear the scouts say, hey, I love when all the quarterbacks are throwing at the combine because who's the alpha dog amongst all the alphas? Who's the cream that rises to the top? And so those are just the characteristics I look like. I'm not, that I look for. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying that if I believe that, I think there's other scouts that believe that. But, Mark or Russ, they might not even care. It's just one person talking.
Last question, Bill.
I'm just want to add one thing for that. If you have a kid you get that feeling from, and your organization has not done the work before that to know his background and understand why he may not be a vocal kid, why he may not be a leader, then your organization's already done a poor job. You should never have a kid like that when you're sitting in your draft meetings and not have that information already on his background and be able to explain why this may be how he acts in an interview.
And I'm going to add my last piece. I run around the country this time of year and I help these young men that are here learn how to interview. because I don't think it's right that these kids have to go in front of NFL executives and never done an interview before. Like I said, if it was my son, I'm going to tell him how to interview. And I teach every one of them. When I first go to meet them, I come up and I shake their hand and see what they do because it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. And so I teach them. I'm like, no. And I always tell them, like, if you get a weird handshake, you say, wait a second, let me reset that and redo the handshake. But do not let that stuff just sit out there. So it's really, I know it seems so trivial. And the other thing I would sit there and say, the world of yes sir and no sir is still very powerful. Yes ma'am, no ma'am is still very powerful. I mean, no matter where you are in your life, in your journey, I still say, my wife talks to me all the time, so why would you say that to, he's your friend? Like, it's just ingrained in me. It takes you a long way.
Last question. Michael Zachary, University of Louisville. First of all, I just want to thank all of y'all for taking the time to come speak to us. And my question is, it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about the HBCUs and FCS schools. There's been people like Carson Wentz and Trey Lance that are going top picks. And there's also been players like Warren Moon who's got to play, win 5 CFL championships before he gets his chance to make it to the league. So my question is for those HBCU, FCS schools, and those players that may think they don't get drafted to the league, they have no other chance of making it back. How do you market yourself as the CFL to those players?
I don't care who takes it. I love the question because.
Well, I mean, you gotta one hope that you have a qualified agent that is interested in representing you, because it's a lot better to have an agent selling your story than you selling your story. But if it comes to that, you get your film, you make your package, you get it out there. I mean, I can't even tell you how many dozens of players send me their film on a daily basis, right? So you just try every angle, every opportunity, and eventually, you're going to find out whether or not you're good enough.
So I want to, go ahead, Russ.
And I would just add one other thing. For the small school kids that are upset they're getting overlooked, do not sit at home and say, I'm NFL, I should be in the NFL and don't play anywhere else. If it's Arena League, if it's Canadian League, get yourself on film. There's a reason you're not getting in the NFL. It's not that 32 teams didn't know your name. Now, they may not have done a good job of scouting you, but you need to go get film. You don't know how many kids I recruit from smaller schools that say, nah, man, I don't want to come up to Canada. I'm going to wait for the NFL. And good luck. That means you're saying, I'm done with football.
Good stuff, brother. Listen, hold on a second. Bill's going to close out message. Sit here. These guys have offered to stay afterwards out in the lobby, but they're not going to leave for a minute. I'm asking them because they've done a great job. But what we had in the past, they leave. I want to go talk to Dominik. We need you to stay to hear Bill's closing comments. We got surveys that are filled out. You get drinks. They get drinks. And we're going to have some fun here. But more importantly, how about an SMWW thank you for the incredible.